So let us settle in, taking a moment to close our eyes and to become more present, to take a deeper breath than the one before, to feel your heartbeat, even if it's imaginary. To clear any cobwebs from your mind. Maybe something that you've been obsessing about or stressing about. Just let it go for a bit. You can always choose to pick it back up later. And to just arrive, to fully arrive. You came with a purpose. You came for a reason today. And the more empty you are of everything else, the more you will take away the juiciest parts of this morning's celebration, which is all in service to you, in service to your well-being. So let yourself be open and receptive. And then slowly and gently bring your attention back. And when you're ready, if you wish, open your eyes. Good morning. Welcome to Center for Spiritual Living, Morristown. I'm Frankie Timmers, the spiritual director here, and I'm so glad that you decided to get out of bed this morning and come and be part of this sweet, small yet mighty community. Because together we create this community. I'm not it. This building isn't it. You're it. And so together we create this beautiful community that's a part of many, many, many other ones all over the world called Centers for Spiritual Living. If you're here for the first time, we extend a special welcome to you because I still remember from 30-some years ago first walking into this kind of community and what it felt like. So we invite you to be open and to really receive the spiritual nourishment that we offer. And this is a really good time for you to come because we have lots of stuff happening. It's September, so all our classes begin. And today there's a free workshop, not just for anybody new, but for everybody, a 2-hour workshop. We're just going to have a lot of fun and kind of go back to the basics. And it's also a workshop that can introduce you to what the classes are all about. And if you don't want to do that, you can take the painting workshop that's happening today. Wendy Stamer is here. This is the flyer. It's a watercolor class, and it's from 1 to 3:30. So you can do that. The flyers are all out there in the foyer, so take a look and see what excites you, and just say yes to it. Because when we say yes to something new, as you know, when we say yes to something new, it opens all kinds of doors and windows. So what we do here at the center most is probably spiritual mind treatment, which is our word for affirmative prayer. And because this month's theme is about spiritual mind treatment, the feeling, I'm going to talk a lot about that today. So let's close our eyes, if you wish, and just take a moment and hear this as your own words, as if Spirit is speaking to you, as if your higher self is revealing these truths. So when I say I or me, I'm simply speaking from and to that higher self. So right here, right now, right where I stand, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually as well, is on the soil of spirit, on the ground of my essential nature. And I stand on solid ground because the ground of spirit, the ground of the universe, the ground of divine love, wisdom, peace, harmony, and grace is everywhere I am, is everywhere I go. And the more I claim this, the more I accept this, the more conviction I have around it, the more it shows up, not just in my life, but in the world. So then I look at the news through different eyes. Then I hear news through different ears. Then my heart, my mind are open to having truth reveal itself by means of me. And I am ready, willing, and able. I release whatever is in the way, so that the fertile soil of my being becomes more receptive. And I realize that everything is a miracle. Everything is a blessing. Even that which I previously thought wasn't is a blessing. And I'm willing to see it, feel it, know it, experience it. And so I am in a circle of people who believe or are willing to believe or long to believe for the same thing. That makes us of like mind. And when we are with those of like mind, we are lifted up in the realm of truth. And today we're more open than ever before, trusting the outcome. And so we're grateful. Together we're grateful for this community, for its health, its well-being, its vibrancy, and all that it offers. And so it is. So today we have DJ Frankie, because that's what you wanted once a month or once in a while. So I bring you some music today that I've shared before by Lauren Daigle. I want you to know that she is a Christian gospel singer. So when you hear her music, I want you to hear it as if it is spirit within you singing to you. Just hear it with a different tone. But she has a new album out. Anybody that wants that playlist today, I'm happy to share it with you later. And Irene, Avlonitis, is assisting me as the licensed practitioner. And she's got a special story, an Ernest Holmes story, who's the founder of our teaching. And I have to say this. We have a birthday today in our midst. John Pavlik's birthday is today. Happy birthday, John! Anybody else have a birthday today? Okay. We don't want to leave anyone out. You know how our feelings go. All right. So, I know for sure that the sun is going to set today. Anybody here not sure about that? I am sure that it will rise tomorrow. I may not see it. And I'm sure that fall begins this week, the end of this week, next Sunday. I'm sure that's not winter. So what are some of the things that you are sure about like that? You can say it out loud. What are you sure about like that? Taxes. Sure about having to pay taxes. Yes, there are a few benefits when you're a minister, but yes, we pay taxes. What else? That you're loved. How beautiful is that? She's sure that she's loved. That's a big one, people. What else are you sure about? Music. That music brings peace and happiness. Yeah, what else? That the phases of the moon will happen as they always do. Yes. So there are some things that we know for sure, that we don't even question, that we maybe take for granted, but there are some things that we know for sure. The other thing I know for sure, the other thing that I know for sure is that the law, universal law, works and responds to my consciousness. I am sure that principle exists, whether you call it God, Spirit, universal intelligence, the infinite presence of divine love. You can call it by whatever name gives you a feeling, because if you want to puke, don't use that name. I am sure that it exists, and that it exists in all of us, that it exists all the time. And so the kind of conviction that we want to arrive at spiritually is the same kind that we've already arrived at when it comes to the sun, the moon, the tides, taxes, music, and being loved. And that shows us our inner work. And the more we do that with grace, with love, with patience, with compassion, the more easy it is and the more easily we will demonstrate. The more we fight it, which I know we do sometimes, the more we struggle with it, the more judgment we have around it or fear, the harder it will be, because what we demonstrate is how we go about cultivating conviction in the areas where we might not have it yet. And nobody here has to work on being convinced that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. But you might have to work on knowing that you are loved, knowing that you can demonstrate, knowing that your mind is a powerful thing. And so today, that's what I want to talk about, and what it's like to have that kind of conviction, and how do we arrive at that. And then we get to hear a story by Irene of Ernest Holmes treating all night for something. I don't know if anybody here has ever done that, but all night, because the whole idea is that we do our spiritual practices until they demonstrate. I know so many people that come up to me and say, I treated for that and it hasn't demonstrated. And my first word is, yet. Yet. Keep treating then until it does. Right? And so spiritual mind treatment is our word for affirmative prayer, and those are the things that we teach in our classes. Is what I'm going to talk about today. Everybody that comes to the workshop, whether you're new or not, you're going to walk out with a much easier experience of how to use spiritual mind treatment. Because I know there are people in this room that have been coming for a long time, and that if I said to you, do a treatment right now about health, that you would shake in your freaking boots. You couldn't do it. You'd be so scared. First thing that happens is, what are people going to think? What if I don't do it right? Well, that's something that's in the way, not for us, but for you, right? So if I said to all of you, stand up and do a treatment for, and I make up all of this, more than half of you might be a little resistant. So we want to arrive at that place where we just drop, stop, and treat, as Reverend Michelle always says, or stop, drop, and treat. And so the idea is that we just do it until life becomes a living prayer, a living spiritual mind treatment. It's like we're planting seeds in the creative soil of mind. I don't know how many of you that are gardeners, when you plant seeds and you kind of go, I hope they're going to grow. I don't know what's going to come out of this one. It says tomato seeds, but what if it's cucumbers? Right? That's kind of how we act without realizing it. And so the whole idea is that spiritual mind treatment, our responsibility is to cultivate greater conviction until we arrive at the conviction of knowing, of absolutely knowing that our word has power. Absolutely knowing it just as much as we know that the sun is going to rise tomorrow, and that the phases of the moon are utterly predictable. And so that's about having a feeling, right? We don't have that feeling we don't have a lot of feelings when we plant seeds in the soil. Or maybe some of you do have mystical experiences when you plant your seeds. But it's kind of the same thing. You just do it. You just know it. You just experience that conviction of knowing that when you plant tomato seeds, you're going to get tomatoes. And we do this practice until any doubt dissolves, any question dissolves, and that's all work of the mind. So Ernest Holmes says, right thought constantly poured into consciousness will eventually purify it. Discord might be likened to a bottle of impure water. Healing might be likened to the process of dropping pure water into the bottle, a drop at a time, until the whole is clean and pure. We all love that metaphor, I think. And so, last week, for those of you who were here, this bowl was very heavy when I carried it out. I almost needed help, because you all put in the things that you wanted to release, that didn't serve you anymore, that you are ready to let go of. And so I treated over this bowl every day this week. It traveled with me a bit during the week, and now it's much lighter, because it's just all spirit. No more heavy burdens. So those of you that were here and that remember what you placed in here, if you are not free of it, it isn't that, it's you, right? And so don't beat yourself up about it. So some of you might put in their fear around money, and maybe you still have a lot of fear around money, and you say, no. Just kind of go, wait, let me look at it in a different way. So the whole idea is to look at our burdens in a different way, and I'm going to give you that way today. It's nothing new, because really I say the same thing every Sunday, just in a slightly different way. I'm like surprised sometimes that haven't run out of things to say, but that's how much I love this teaching and love life and love thinking about it and love playing with it and love getting creative with it. So I want you to look at it in a different way today. I want you to look at your fears, your doubts, your worries, your insecurities, your belief in lack, your limitations, your problems in a different way. Because what we tend to do as human beings, Ernest Holmes says, our human tendency is towards the negative, is what our tendency is to judge them, to curse them, to blame someone, if not ourselves, and all those things. And by the way, they are really great ways to block the healing, to block your good. So we're going to look at it in a different way today. The way I want you to look at it differently is by looking at it and realizing that you just have to cultivate a little more conviction. That you have to see more truth in the experience. That you need more clarity, and that it can only come through your own consciousness, through your own mind. So what if the stuff that we struggle with is just the universe's way of saying, you got a little more truth to know, you got a little more clarity to have, you have a few more spiritual mind treatments or affirmative prayers to do. That's a whole different feeling, right? It's like, oh, you might be experiencing lack financially. And if we look at it not as a burden or a struggle, because that just imposes more fear upon it, which creates more limitation and more lack, we say, oh, there's more truth for me to know about my inherent abundance. If you're struggling with anything around health, it's not that something's wrong with your consciousness. It's not that you're being punished. It's not that you now have to worry and be afraid. No, there's just a higher truth to be known, which is that your body is an instrument of the divine, and the divine infuses it with everything it needs to heal, and the healing is happening now. Claiming that and having conviction around that is a whole different experience than, oh, here I am again. It's fall. I'll probably get a cold. Better get my flu shot. Right? And so it's a different way of looking at it. And we have that responsibility as people who call themselves spiritual or on a spiritual path. And so it's always about growing more conviction rather than always figuring out how to fix our problems so then we can relax. No, it's a process that each of us are in. To know more truth, to see more truth, to feel more truth, to experience more truth as we go through life. So it's not that we haven't yet demonstrated greater abundance or health or creativity or love. It's just that there is yet more to know about it. This is what I yet must embody about it. This is what I must know more deeply. This is where I need to cultivate more conviction. This is where I need to conclude a different idea. And so Ernest Holmes says, always come to a complete conclusion when giving a treatment, when doing a prayer. Always come to a complete conclusion when giving a treatment. Always feel that it is done complete and perfect, giving thanks for the answer as if it were already objectified. Each treatment should be repeated daily until a healing takes place. If it takes 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 years, the treatment must be kept up until a healing is accomplished. We're all spiritual athletes. It's fun to watch tennis, football, baseball, basketball, the Olympics. But rarely do we think how many hours have gone into that athlete arriving at that place, and how much sweat, blood, and tears, and heartache, and falling down and getting up. It's the same on the spiritual path. We are like spiritual athletes. We're always training. And so when I traveled this week, I had a wonderful experience because I went to Bob Sima and Shannon Plummer's wedding. Not everybody knows who they are, but they are wonderful people, and Bob is an amazing musician. And Shannon is, they do workshops. Shannon sings as well. And they had their wedding in Maryland. And it was a very beautiful ceremony that they created from beginning to end with lots of ritual. And they had different stations. There was a station where they had 6 boxes. And in each box, we were supposed to write a message to them. It was a box for their first anniversary, their second, their 5th, their 10th, their 15th, and their 25th. Which they would then open on that day. And then they had a table where they were making, I forget the name of it, Despisado. It was like a Native American piece of art with things from nature and just really beautifully done, and they used that. And then there was a table with stones that we painted with our intention for them. And they made a circle of stones around where they had the ceremony. And then they had bowls of these rings that are made of coconut. Mine is totally turning my finger blue. But they're rings that we were to choose and then put on and then make a holy commitment, a holy vow to ourselves. And so it was lots of beautiful ritual that they then used during the whole ceremony. And then last night, this was Friday, last night they had a concert, which some of you watched on live stream. I did partly. And so there was just this whole feeling about a marriage ceremony that's not just about 2 people, but we make vows every single moment. We're always making vows to ourselves, and many of them aren't even conscious. And many of them are not vows we would consciously make, the kind of vows that we make against ourselves. So we want to really pay attention and arrive at a deeper conviction of knowing that there is something holy and sacred that is happening inside of us that's about our soul and not about our body, not about our physical life, not about our possessions, not about our relationships to others, but they are holy within ourselves. And so that's why we want to continuously arrive at a deeper knowing. The deepest knowing that we can arrive at is this place of trust. This place of trusting creative mind, principle, universal law, spirit, God, 100%, all the time. Imagine that for a moment. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine that you 1,000% trust universal law, trust God in you, trust divine love, trust your inherent abundance, trust the healing power of spirit, that you trust it completely. Imagine that for a moment. Maybe you already do, but imagine that. If you do, how can you even more trust that? And then just let yourself feel it. You can open your eyes now if you want to. But to know that the words of truth that you speak when you do a spiritual mind treatment or when you do a meditation does something to your consciousness. It shifts something, it heals something, it opens something, it gives something. So then it's about not just trusting, but completely surrendering. And that's been my experience with my health challenges this last few months, is that I totally trust universal law to back me up, to support me, and I completely surrender to spirit in me, knowing that the healing is already taking place and that it might not look like the way I would like it to look like. And can I trust that? And my answer is yes, absolutely, no question, no doubt. And so, what is there for you to surrender to in a deeper way? Because this is what I know. The deeper I go, the more I meet spirit, the more powerfully I experience the presence of spirit. Because it is as within, so without. Spirit can't meet you where you aren't yet. If you walk around with a belief of I can't, I don't have yet, I don't know have enough, I'm not good enough, that's where it meets you. So we get to dissolve that and arrive at a deeper conviction that all is well and all is given. And so what do you have to let go of? You don't have to answer that. Well, you do have to answer it to yourself, not to us, not to me. But what do you have to let go of? What's in the way? Where do you have to let yourself fall? Where do you have to free yourself? Where do you have to trust a little bit more? Where do you have to trust spirit, law, principle a little bit more? Dr. Robert Bitzer, who was one of the greats in our teaching many, many, many years ago, he was tough. He scared the bejeebies out of me. He used to say, never desert principle. Never desert principle. Not even on special occasions. Never desert principle. Not even in special occasions. So what that means is that we never give up. Never give up. And when you struggle with something and when you think you can't demonstrate and when you fear it's not changing, don't give up. Just keep doing your treatments. If you need support, ask our practitioners, ask me, take a class. Never, ever give up because you don't know if the next second the demonstration doesn't happen. Always continue to treat and trust. That's your spiritual work, because our spiritual work is simply directing the law, telling the law what to do for us. And so I didn't want to take up a new page. I'm like, what? So we trust and we practice, and we trust and we practice, and we trust and we practice, and we never give up until we bear fruit, until we say, yes, this is the demonstration. It is done. And you harvest that beautiful demonstration. And now I want you to hear a wonderful story from about Dr. Ernest Holmes that Irene will share with you.
Good morning. This story comes from Essential Ernest Holmes, and it so beautifully connects to what Reverend Frankie just shared and illustrates the point that prayer and treatment work. So it's a story about Dr. Holmes and a colleague who, this colleague was the teacher of the Institute of Religious Science, and they were together in Los Angeles. And they were in a hotel together, during that time, and the phone rang. And the voice on the other end was a familiar voice to Dr. Holmes. The voice was also somewhat groggy in tone. And the person on the other end was asking for Dr. Holmes to come over to his room because he was in need. And so he responded and he walked in with his colleague. And the person was lying on his bed, and he declared this statement. He said, "I'm drunk." And even though he was claiming that he was drunk, he appeared to be sober in that he lucid and he was talking about it. So then Dr. Holmes said, "Well, if you're drunk, why don't you get up? Why don't you stand? And why don't you walk?" And he said, "Well, my body is drunk, but it seems that your mind is perfectly clear," he said. "So why don't you just stop doing what you're doing, go home, and take care of yourself?" And the gentleman who was in this condition explained that this happens from time to time, and that he goes on these binges for a couple of weeks. And when he does so, he drinks alone. And so he said to him, like to Dr. Holmes, "What's my trouble? Why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? Can you please help me?" And so he said, "Well, when this happens, I'm by myself. I isolate myself. And after about a couple of weeks, he calls his wife, and typically what happens is his wife brings him back to a better place." "So what do you think I can do?" replied Ernest Holmes. "Well," the person lying on the bed said, "I believe in this stuff, this teaching that you do, and I believe that there is a power that can help me." And Dr. Holmes thought to himself, what a tragedy, what a true tragedy that this gentleman who was so successful, professional, was simply beaten and defeated. So he asked, "Would you really like to give it up?" And the gentleman replied, "Yes, even in this moment, I have cravings that are irresistible." And so, we know from teachings and our own teaching that psychologists, metaphysicians believe that if there's a habit, an addiction, a condition that's sort of overtaking, it's not treated simply with willpower. And so what came next in this story might surprise you. Dr. Holmes went down to the bar, ordered a bottle of whiskey, brought it back to the room, placed it on the bedside table, and said, Here, I'd like you to have this, take this, and have as much as you want. Drink what you will. And if you need more in the night, I'll provide you with more." And the gentleman was quite stunned by this, as you can imagine, because he said to him, "Well, aren't you going to help me?" And he said, "Yes." And he walked away. He went back to his room and with his colleague, they were each in a separate room nearby to the gentleman, and they went to work. He says, we have a situation, and we have to lick this problem, and we have to do it tonight." And so Dr. Holmes didn't want to be near the gentleman who was showing these signs of being defeated. He wanted to see him as strong, self-reliant, poised in pure spirit, unshaken, unshakable. And so they went to work, each one speaking it out loud, speaking the treatment orally. First one and then the other took up the thought for him, and this is what they said. This man is conscious that he is pure spirit. He is poised and at peace with himself. There is nothing in him. Sorry, let me just look closely at this. There is nothing in him that craves alcohol. He is not seeking to escape from anything. He meets every issue of life without fear. There is nothing to run away from, nothing to avoid. At all times, he has a sense of well-being, happiness, of serenity, security, and self-expression. There is no memory of ever having received any pleasure or benefit from alcohol. There is no anticipation that he can ever receive pleasure from it again. The spirit within him is satisfied. It is radiant. It never seeks to escape from itself. There is no anticipation that he can ever receive pleasure from it. I said that right. The spirit within him is satisfied. It is radiant. It never seeks to escape from itself. It exists in its own sense of self-adequacy, and it exists in joy, in freedom, and in peace. They did their work through the night, each one speaking it out loud and in thought, until there was a sense of relief for this man, until there was a glorious sense of divine sonship, free from fear, perfectly centered, contented, happy, and radiant, self-assured, united with the infinite, and one with the complete satisfaction. The man woke up the next morning and called Dr. Holmes once again to come to his room. He said, "The stuff that you gave me, it's in the closet." He had only had 2 drinks. "You see, I feel at peace now. I feel different." And Dr. Holmes replied, "You see, we were using the law of life for a definite purpose. There is no mystery about this. Anyone using this same method would have had this same result. Take the heat out from under old hurts, and what's left is light." Okay, so now that we've spoken it out into the world, you know how powerful that is when we speak it into the world, into the universe. I also want to let you know about how you can be supported as you're standing for yourself and treating for yourself. As you know, we have beautiful classes at the center, and the classes are truly a way to just immerse yourself in that which you want to grow in your own life. Just when Frankie spoke about the garden, when we tend to our garden, things manifest, right? If we don't tend to our garden, or we don't plant a garden, we don't reap the fruits and the vegetables. And so just whatever metaphor you want to use, if it's in an athletic with the spiritual athlete, which I love that metaphor as well, you know, when we use it, if we don't use it, we lose it in the world of physicality. So when you take a class, it is just a dynamic way to be with fellow seekers, like-minded people, and it opens up things for you. Opens up things in channels, opportunities that maybe you didn't even know were there, but it supports you in your journey. And I will say the last class that I took with you, it really did. It was about the creative process, and it opened up something wonderful for me. And I had an idea to have a year-long class, a year of intentional living last year, and I never knew that was inside of me until that class, and it came to fruition, and it was a beautiful experience. We had a lovely community where we met every other Wednesday and just was in such a sacred space. So you'll be surprised what comes out of classes and what you'll gain from them. And so dive in. It's time.
So now we close with a healing treatment, but nobody needs prayer. You're all healed, right? All right. So if you are, then I want you to think of somebody that you would like to extend this treatment to. Just think of course, keeping some of it yourself, but to just extend it to someone you know, somebody that's in need, and maybe even expand it beyond to our country, to all those in the path of Hurricane Florence, to all those in the path of any fires, to our politicians, to beyond this country into the world, whether it is child abuse, violence, poverty, hunger. Just extend it beyond who you are. And then just hold that for a moment. Breathe into that and just consciously let yourself be that place of extended energy for the world. So right here, right now, we gather together in consciousness because where two or more are gathered in God's name, we experience light, love, peace, power, joy, wisdom, harmony, grace. And so right now, each of us are an instrument of this love, this grace, this peace, this harmony that's unique. That's nothing like anyone else's. And because we are alive, that unique experience is needed, and it's needed to be moved and flowed and shared and do its work inside of us, in our consciousness, body, mind, spirit, heart. And so right now, we're simply willing, open, and receptive to everything that the universe gives, which is the infinite of everything. We let go of any blockage in the way, whether we're conscious of it or not, and we trust our experience because there's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing wrong with life. There's nothing missing. There's nothing lacking. It's all the divine flow of spirit itself revealing itself to us perfectly. And in some of the places where we might be a little more challenged, it's just Spirit's way of telling us, see the truth, know the truth, embody the truth, accept the truth, welcome the truth, live the truth, express it, and surrender to it. All of it is an invitation to just relax and trust the divine flow. And right now, we each stand for that. Each of us in our own way. And where we feel resistance, we choose infinite compassion, the same that Spirit has for us. And we surrender to that and allow it to have its way with us. So with awe and gratitude for this and so much more, we now close this Sunday celebration knowing that all is well with our soul. And so it is.